First of all, thank Professor Low to give me this opportunity to be here. However, frankly speaking, I'm here more learning than giving. I'd like to say that actually I'm a loser in the design for social innovation. However, with other words, probably I'm just a startup on social for design for social innovation. That's quite, it's not easy to explain how I'm in this situation. However, I have some story to share with you. My topic is design for infrastructure, and I think that is the double challenge for me because first of all, I'm a loser of design for social innovation. Second, I know very little about infrastructure, and the main reason is that probably it's only because that in China, both of the two topics, social innovation and infrastructure, is quite far away from design. And especially I'm from Beijing. I'm not from Shanghai, as Sabrina has also introduced a bit. However, Beijing, I'm not sure whether you have any physical impression about that city. Wow, yeah. It's the city of power. We can say that Beijing is a city of history. Beijing is a city of culture. And in fact, the main element of that city and the spirit of the city is the power. And that means it's not a city for living. It's especially not a city for social life. And more precisely, it's a city, is the Pyongyang of China in the field of social innovation. And actually in that city, the authority is quite sensitive to all of the social movements or social actions, and very limited space to the society, including the academics, designers, to be engaged into some public issues. And however, even I am a designer and I have a professional job in the university, I will try my best to continue my career. So I started from something really has demands, that is eco-design or sustainable design or sustainable environment design. So we got an opportunity of the public toilet. Anyway, we'd like to get some definition about infrastructure to help me to understand what I'm doing. So infrastructure, the fundamental facilities and the system serving the country, city or other area actually is too large, and I think too large means nothing. And the physical components of interrelated system providing commodities and service essential to enable, sustain or enhance societal living conditions. Maybe this is more helpful than the previous one. And but we can say that public toilet is definitely an infrastructure, a part of infrastructure. So therefore, give me a very little reason to come here to talk about that. And here, this is the center city, part of the center city of Beijing area. And in that area, from some historic reason, there is no infrastructure related to sewage. So basically, no residence has public toilet there. So they have to share the toilets. And that is quite a challenge of everyday life. You can imagine that no matter in the winter or summer, or no matter midnight or the early morning, you have to come out to do some very basic human behavior. And so we supported the local governments to do research about the public toilets. And actually we did a lot and followed the very basic classic design research process. We will see that in this Hutong, there are several public toilets, and however, we cannot count in the green ones. The green ones are the toilets inside some restaurant or shops, but it's accessible, but definitely not a public issue. And we help them to define the demands, requirements of the local people, and maybe other stakeholders, for example, the visitors and outsiders, how they can use or cannot use. And if you visited Beijing, probably you have some experience, and it will be one of your most embarrassing things in your life. And we started from the field research, and we found that there are it's so density from the point of view of the different requirements, because for the local people, it's a part of their life. For the tourists, it's part of basic condition, basic needs. But how to say that? If you can, you better avoid that. And there are some specific groups, for example, the cleaners, the public workers, and they have to maintain this, and very poor payment. So a lot of issues has to be considered, and the real conditions are so limited, and almost you can have no innovation and some creative ideas for that. So you will see that we did research. The elderly people with electricity vehicle, and others will use the public toilet as a point of getting their small business, because it's basically a public space. And puppies, dogs. If the people would like to walk out their dogs, maybe they will pass by that. And the cleaners living in that toilet. And anyway, taxi drivers, delivery guys, every kind of person will use this. So, yeah, we made a list of the different groups in specific time, and what's their demands, and what's their special conditions. For example, a father carrying a very little girl, and employee taking a public bicycle but cannot lock it anywhere. So these all the design research process. We will say that there is a question, because everybody here are learning design, and we will ask whether the design of public product service system equals the design for infrastructure. And for me, actually, I cannot tell the main difference between the two items, the terminologies. However, I think there is something we cannot ignore, even that is very weak, very weak, and very small. I think there is something related to the spirit of public. For example, we have to consider all of the demands of the local people. So you will find there is a very special thing, and it's for it's the basin to clean your personal pots during the night. I don't know whether there is a specific name that giving people people have no private toilets at home. So during the evening, they will use a very traditional pot, ceramic or some other materials for the evening serving. So in the morning, they will take out all of them here to clean. So in the past, there is no service for these demands, because it's too outstanding. However, we consider the demands of the people, and we actually renovated a facility. This facility is not for ordinary use. Basically, it's used in hospital for some specific patients to wash their artificial anus. And that means we tried our best to satisfy the local people's demands. However, to satisfy the demands of local residents is all our purpose. We ask ourselves, given that there is so limited resource for the ordinary residents, whether there is any other thing we can do for any other person. And I think there is yes. We still have a lot of things to make a public service into our infrastructure. So we consider the demands of others. For example, a corner for the cleaners, for the outdoor workers, can have a rest and get some hot water. For example, even though that in the historic center, the majority population are elderly, we consider there is a possibility for children or for the mothers and for other disabled people. So even given that there is once there is space, we will set up such a family room. Okay. So the first question, whether the design for public product service system equals infrastructure. I said no. There is something we have to pay attention now. That means make it as public as possible. Not designed for a specific group, but imagine there will be sometimes they will have the contradiction in the interest. Because once there are enough outsiders, that means there will be less resource for the local people. However, we are designing infrastructure. That means we have to get a balance in between community, public, or some specific person. So this is the question, and I think we had a bit understanding of that. However, we had to continue with another story. Actually, I reorganized this presentation last night. That means I even have no time to input a bit of the graphic design here. However, new story. Actually, before my coming to Shanghai, Professor Manzini and I visited Chengdu, which is a city in the southwest China and about 15 million people. And it's a very beautiful place. However, there is something very different with Beijing or even with Shanghai. And given that, we back to the toilet story. It starts from the toilet story. Given that we were commissioned to design the public toilets for the local residents, we did a lot of interviews with local people. So we visit the service center, the community service center, for quite a lot of times. And almost all of the service center, community service center, looks very similar in Beijing. They look like this. You will see a lot of boards announce where they are, what they are, and which kind of service they will provide. And in general, there will be a meeting room with very modern facilities, and there will be formal and informal meetings for different groups. And sometimes it will be decorated with some local elements and to welcome people to come here. And sometimes even there will be a little wheel, and they will connect in the meeting place with the office place. You can see here. And sometimes they even start to organize the community election or community voting in related to some specific topics. So this is my impression of the community service center with my real experience. However, in Chengdu, I found something very new and very different. This is a community center in Chengdu City. And I found that it's totally renovated. It's an open salon, it's an open salon. And we can still find some government staff here, and all of the residents can get some basic service here. And besides that, it's specific given a place as a sitting room. And we were told by the community officers, and now they have a slogan that make the community service accessible to everybody. And they are inviting the local residents to come here to have a rest and know each other. For me, it's quite comfortable. Actually, it's real. Some place I'm not so much scared compared with that. So in Beijing, I will try my best. If I don't have any specific problem, I will not visit there. However, in this case, probably sometimes when it was raining or something special, I will really come into for some help or support. And that community also developed a public space in the nearby park. It is named the E-Public. E-Public actually is a cafe, and I found some different rules in that cafe. One is the community officers. It's really government officers, and they are financed by the state. And different group is the social workers. Actually, the social workers is the main rule in this public meeting room. And if the local people have some specific needs, for example, to organizing a reading meeting or organize a birthday party for the children, they can go to the social worker and order the place free, totally free. So, and this community actually is in a quite high up middle class neighborhood. And however, this is our first step in Chengdu City. However, we get something even more interesting. However, I make a summary of the community center I visited in Chengdu that is totally multifunctional. That means besides the basic municipal services, you can be there. Maybe only have a rest or get a coffee or meet your friends and read some books. And it's totally open. It's not some place you are scared. You're not there to go into. And totally from 7 to midnight, and from Monday to Sunday. So it's inviting for me. It's really inviting. And I think if I am living in that city, I will visit there many times. And it's really accessible. So we went to the second stop. It's also in a community, and this community located in the center city of Chengdu, and it's an old neighborhood. So we found something very special. This is the entrance and looks very similar with the community centers in Beijing. However, the inside is totally interesting. For example, I found there is a desk in the corner of every room. It is said it's the diffused office corner. That means in each different room, there is a desk with a government officer or sometimes social worker. They have a table and even with home-like tablecloths. And there, however, it's too dark to see the detail. There is a sitting room, but it's totally different with the sitting room in Beijing community centers. All of the chairs, if we can see clearly, is made by bamboo. It's not IKEA, not some furniture company products, and it's from the normal market, and very, very cheap, I can say. And it's not in lines, and not in groups. It's in a circle. And this lady is the director of the community. And we found in a room there is a museum. It is called the Community Museum. And why is Community Museum? Because all of the furnitures they display are collected from the neighborhoods, from the families. And with each furniture there is a story, very beautiful story. And actually they still keep some functions. For example, in this room, it's still a place of meeting or organized party or discussing something with the officers. And besides all this, there is a Seas Museum, and it's totally creative. Why? Because in that community, I was told that more and more new residents moving into the neighborhood in the recent years. We can imagine that China is such a fluid society, and no matter where you are from, probably you are from the very, very far northeast of China, or probably you are from Xinjiang, and you never know your neighbors before. So the community committee advocate all of the new residents to bring some seeds from their hometown and display in this Seeds Museum. On the other hand, the Seeds Museum is not a museum, it's a place of cultivating. All of the seeds can be cultivated, and anyone in that neighborhood can be volunteered to cultivate a kind of seeds, and afterwards move into the community garden outside. And a reading room. We will say it's not something like library or like some bookstore, very fashion bookstore. It's still some home-like without any formal style from a designer's perspective. And you can find different things, but however, in general, all the books are related to the residents' everyday life. It's related to healthy or to recipes of cooking, etc. So outside the community center, there is a community garden, and all of the small planting plot is adopted by a resident, by a local resident. So we will see, in this community center, there is a different spirit with the previous one, or even totally opposite sense with the community centers in Beijing. But we have to understand there is no designer's intervention, because I did some interview with the directors. There is no official design intervention, and all of the idea, all of the functions, all of the museums are designed by the committee, volunteers, residents themselves. So I'd like to ask myself, and maybe to our audience here, what is the difference between this service center? We will say, what is the infrastructure? In the previous slide, there is a definition about infrastructure. If something can help, can enable the societal livings, and how these two community centers support the societal livings. However, I think this is still a question I'd like to know, to understand. I cannot give an answer so far, but I tried my best to summarize something. Probably first is the appearance of ownership of the service user. In the beginning, I like to use the word, the appearance of the service user, but no, definitely it's not only the appearance. We will say that if there is a service center, every day there will be a lot of service users there, but it still can be different sense. That sense is whether you are one of the part of this community center, or we use another word. If you are one part of this social infrastructure, that is so clear, obvious, and convincing for me at least. The second is, in the last community center, we will say that it is more way of the function of the physical space. So no matter which room I enter into, no matter the community museum, no matter the meeting space, no matter the Seas Museum, I cannot tell in which specific function it is providing. It seems that there is different opportunities and possibilities. It's only rely on what you are going to use it. And I never had this kind of thought when I was in Beijing or in other different community centers. However, in this one, that is clear. I can sit here, read. I can sit here, have a rest. I can sit here to have a cup of tea. And I can sit here to maybe have a very informal meeting. And I can make the CIS Museum a party room. I can make the CIS Museum to be the children's playroom. I can make the CIS Museum to be a nursery for the small babies. So there are so many opportunities or possibilities. And the third, probably, when we are saying social infrastructure, a main important point is that it is supposed to improve the connectivity as a major party. That means different connections may happen in the CIS Museum, in the community museum, because we are never been there. Once we went there, some connection found. When there are other social workers, specialist social workers, to improve to support some elderly elderly caring, there are new connections. And when there is a volunteer trying to teach a course of calligraphy, there is a new connection. And we will not see this in the community centers in my city, in Beijing. But here, it's totally possible and visible. So, this is only a story about last day's experience in another city. However, maybe I can get very, very draft summarize of the new style community service center. It's really public. It's open. Even toilet, it should be public and open, not only to the local residents, but also to others. And it's supposed to be fluid. Given that we are in a fluid society, maybe the physical space should be fluid in order to suit for all kinds of activities and behaviors. And once you fix that, one possible result is to reduce the possibility of the physical space. Second, a very practical issue, it will cost a lot. If you have a very informal sitting room with some furniture collected from the community, it almost costs nothing. But if you buy something, you organize that, it's quite a payment, I would say. And given that I try to focus on my topic of infrastructure, we will say that not only some social infrastructure, maybe other infrastructure, we can have some imagination of the future direction. How about this? How about the railways or railway stations? Anyway, given that I'm in China, I will be very patient to wait for that day. And this is a totally new topic and challenge to design. However, that we are in the experimental process, I will have this spirit of experimenting, so I will not care how much time I have to wait. And last, I'd like to make an advertisement of the city I just visited, is Chengdu. And it is said to be the experimental zone of the social development and the community reconstruction. And last days, they organized a national forum named National Community Development and Community Making. However, in between the 700 audience, only Professor Manzini and I are the designers. There may be some architects and planners. However, we are the special persons. And I think probably in the future, they will have large demands on the designers' participation. And also, I still can remember that in our discussion, a lot of designers mentioned that the exit strategy, or how to maintain how to maintain an innovative case in the long term. I would say probably we can find some cooperators, for example, the social workers. And their responsibility is located into community and sustain all of the community services. So once we have this possibility to cooperate with them, maybe it's not a problem of the exit strategy anymore. So probably in the future, I can be a broker of you and that city. Hope so. So thank you.